When it comes to Disney characters that I mainly talk about or put on lists on separate occasions, I mainly narrow it down to the animation studio itself rather than outside factors, like other companies like Marvel or so on. Because sometimes the definition of such characters can overextend more than it needs to be, just like my gripes of Mulan being a Disney princess or other stupid ass categorizations that you put in. But nowadays, I would actually like to explore beyond the edges of just Walt Disney Animation Studios itself within the other media companies that Disney has produced, like Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas as an animated classic we all enjoy today. A separate film from the entire animation studio due to them thinking it would be darker for kids, but nevertheless still watched by anyone of all ages accepted into the Disney canon with theme park appearances in the Halloween and Christmas season. A thorough classic to say the least, where spooky creatures get to actually become heroes in the goals of Jack Skellington, the Pumpkin King, who has grown tired of this holiday, looking for something new with what Christmas brings. And because of that, it lives on more as a Christmas classic and also sometimes a Halloween, depending on that definition. Which, as we all know unfortunately, causes problems that you might know with someone's ways who are more accustomed to the haunt season rather than a jolly season, putting such figures face to face with the likes of his own rival, we all know as Oogie Boogie. And Oogie Boogie remains to be a classic Disney villain, despite him not being directly created by Disney Animation, as I've discluded many times before. But despite this, everyone still praises him into that fold of Disney villains when we consider their own annual Halloween events, or of course branding, being a central figure, bringing in the party, spicing up all we know in what we think of the holiday season. And as a respect and tribute to the own late voice actor Ken Page, who brought such a classy attitude for so many years as his sole voice actor, I thought it was really time to talk about how great Oogie Boogie is as a villain. One who consists of a multitude of bugs wrapped around a burlap sack far away from his fellow residents, who gambles away with fortunes that favor him. And one that isn't really complicated, but as simple as can be. And what's really interesting about him is that despite being the main villain of the entire film, he has a very small role in the film, appearing no more than about 10 minutes in the entire film itself, where that 10 minutes itself also mostly consists of being in the last 22 minutes, putting into perspective of how little important he really is to the entire plot. However, just like they say for so many other icons in cinema, including ones of horror or in general of spookiness, it is a minor role that has a major impact on society and culture. Of course, he also has the other aspects in the film, like his own minions being the secondary antagonists of Lock, Shock, and Barrel, but even they serve him out of fear, because the fact still remains that Oogie is based upon the boogeyman, obviously, who puts fear into children for their misbehavior, the general terror of the night. Just like his short intro in the This Is Halloween sequence appearing on the moon for a brief second, letting you know of the kind of shadowy figure he is, and of course still part of the town and not much to say he's a real big major threat. Because the main point is the perspective of the Pumpkin King himself looking for something new, and again his background is something that is completely the opposite of what he's interested in Christmas Town, jolly peaceful elves compared to undead skeletons and creepy crawly monsters that hide in the night. Like after he tries to make it his own, he literally tasked Lock, Shock, and Barrel with kidnapping Santa Claus, which by extent still makes him responsible for the bad things that will eventually happen. Giving kids what he thinks is good is actually terrifying. And because of who they actually work for, they give him straight down to Boogie Woogie Man himself, who finally appears in such a stylish fashion, rolling the dice and the wheel of his own fortune to gamble with Sandy Claus's fate that he might eventually eat, just like so many other victims they allude to. Like all classic Disney villains, he exudes an amazing personality, one that is flamboyant, that is both sassy and very jazzy, all represented in his song that is just named Oogie Boogie Song, which if I were to include that on my Disney Animation Studios list of villain songs, it would be in the top 5 easily. It's just very fun and exciting, but also very dangerous and scary at the same time, fearing Santa's life from this partying maniac, toying with him like he's playing a game of cat and mouse. Like he is that type of villain that fits well into the mode since he loves to play the long game of torture, pure sadism before he decides to eat his own victims for fun. And unlike most villains I've covered up to this point, he really is relatively simple because of the factors like his short screen time appearance, literally just consists of his song being 25% of his entire screen time in the movie, with no greater theme or motivation you might say. I mean, yes, there are motivating factors, like he wants to take over Jack's role as Pumpkin King, as evident by the backstories in the books, even with Tim Burton saying he's not actually evil. I disagree greatly by that actions, but how he's just mostly there for fun, contrasting the true impact of a person's definition like Jack with Christmas, which I oddly like to think is a great strength of the movie that is different from the rest that we've seen before. And it plays well into the hands because we're supposed to focus on the nightmare before Christmas. And Oogie Boogie is more of a consequence of keeping things such on his part, realization of what you actually are and why this lifestyle doesn't fit. Or if you don't stop to think about it, other heinous individuals can take over, like Oogie himself, who could have ruined Christmas forever had he eaten Santa and Sally, which gives us his greatest weakness ever, being distracted by his apparent lustful nature, reveling in singing songs too long for him to actually even make an impact when he should have just swallowed him right whole there. But then again, that's not fun, right? You gotta spice things up, make things new and creative, inventing more to dive into your own vices. Because when we dive into this song, we have this elaborate traps that he likes to drag Santa into and narrowly try to get him to escape, showcasing a clever hand in creating things to roll the dice in his favor, even if the dice doesn't actually roll in his favor and he cheats. Sure, he might not be quickly into doing the job, but he makes it so damn hard for even Saint Nicholas himself to even think about escaping. Unless we talk about Jack Skellington in this matter, whom he tries to foil with the same inventions, only for him to avoid everything and unravel that sock that kept his bugs inside to scatter to his ultimate defeat. Like, they seriously weren't kidding when he has that small of a role in the film within the span of the entire final act, dying just like that after Santa squashes the lead bug. And in most cases, this would likely mean he isn't an effective villain at all, like all villains who decide to show up in the last act that have no impact on the plot, just like Twist or whatnot. But when we look back upon the nature of everything we learn about this world, those who give and those who threaten to take away, it makes sense. Actions speak louder than any words, and his actions would have destroyed everything that we love as we know it. I know there's also the video games that expand upon his nature, like Oogie's Revenge and the Kingdom Hearts games, but I think this still confirms the same outcome of the character itself, and I don't want to overextend things to what they are, needlessly explaining certain events, because they certainly didn't even need to intend to do that either, with 10 minutes in the entire film. Yet to remind ourselves that the smallest things can make the biggest changes of all, as again, the big point of this video was to praise the amazing talent of Ken Page as Oogie Boogie for a villain that still lives on as a big symbol of Disney's Halloween season and the parties themselves. Sometimes, as within the case of other comically fun characters, villains don't need to be fully fleshed out with certain backstories, especially in a world that is already spooky as hell, but now just have one that dances the night away with his own vices, toying with things, threatening to ruin everything that we love, rolling the dice on your life to join his entire stew. And because of that killer introduction and such memorable song, his character will still keep living on in great infamy of all villains. Sorry I couldn't say any more, but let's just keep it that way, boogieing all our way to the graves with that great love. I'm all done. Goodbye.